In this video, I'm going to show you the least you need to know to get started sculpting in Blender, which is a free program, so you can just go to the Blender website and download for yourself and start experimenting. So if I click off of this, splash screen will disappear, so we have this workspace, and we can select these objects by just clicking on them. I'm going to click this cube because this is what we're going to use for our sculpt. That's what we're going to start with. And we can switch to sculpt mode right here by clicking that, or we could switch up here, and this will open a whole workspace for sculpting. As you can see here, this will help us move around, so we can use this to orbit. You can also orbit by holding the middle mouse button on your mouse and just moving around. You can also pan by holding down this hand and moving it around. If you want to do that with just your mouse, you can hold down shift and middle mouse button to pan. Finally, we have this magnifying glass, and if we drag this, we can zoom in and out. You can also do this by using your scroll wheel to zoom, or you can hold down control and the middle mouse button to move. So all of those navigation, all of the moving around is based off of that middle mouse button. Now, for sculpting, if we get started with this, there's all of these brushes here, and there's quite a few. But just to keep this simple, if you want to learn all their names, you can drag this out and see what they're all called. You can just play with them and see what they do. But a nice thing to understand with this is that you can just use the individual colors on each of these. And notice I dragged it out 2 columns, so we don't have to scroll down as much for all of them. You can also adjust the size of these by holding down control and middle mouse button and dragging. So yeah, there you go. So that's a little bit bigger of a display, but as you can see, these are separated into colors. These ones are all about adding, these ones are about smoothing things out, and these ones are about grabbing the geometry. And it won't do much right now because we don't have very much geometry on this. But if I turn on Dynotopo, it'll dynamically add geometry. But if you have a slower computer, you can, instead of Dynotopo, use Remesh. And instead of every time you add a brush, it adds new geometry, it will just add geometry when you want it to. So you can click Remesh, and notice it added geometry all around this that already exists in those areas, so that we're free to sculpt. And it just doesn't make your computer work as hard. And you can adjust the size of that remesh with voxel size. So if I make this a smaller number, like 0.01, and then remesh, it's actually added a lot more detail. So we can sculpt that. This is around 300,000 vertices or points, and we can see that this is giving us a very smooth sculpt to work with. I find it's a lot easier to adjust the size without remesh if we hold Shift R, and if we look over here, we can see there's a grid over our remesh. So if I just use that and then click when I have the size that I want, so I'm giving it a little bit less detail. So I'm making the number bigger by holding Shift R and moving to the left. If I hold Control R, we're simplifying that detail right there. And so that's nice because we can just visualize the amount of detail that we want to control. But notice when I go down in detail, we are losing some of the details that I had before. So I already showed you the different uses of these brushes, but there's different adjustments you can make to have them do different things. And I have a whole other video where I talk about each individual brush. If that's how you want to explore it, you can also do this for yourself. Just to show you, these settings up here are very important, very useful. If I adjust this radius, we're adjusting the size of the brush, and we can also change the size by holding F and dragging our mouse. If you adjust strength right here, this will adjust how strong your brush is. So if I bring that all the way up, it immediately will affect the mesh. And if I bring it all the way down, it won't affect it at all. You can also change the direction of your brush, so I'm going to bring this strength back up so it does something. And if I change this to negative, it'll start pushing in instead. So using F to bring it out, it's pushing in. And you can control the direction of the brush with the control key. So if I hold down control, it's going out. It's just doing the opposite of what this is set to up here. If I hold down, it goes in now. I'm going to return that to positive because that's how I want that to be. And yeah, there are all of these settings up here, but I think the most important one to focus on is fall off. We're going to change the curve of what's being added. And if that doesn't make sense, you can just see what I have right here. If I just add to that point, it's adding a sharp fall off. So that curve. So if I use smooth, it's a much smoother edge. if I just add it there. If you're sculpting a character, you'll usually want symmetry along this axis. So we can see these axes right here. So the x-axis is being mirrored, so on this side and this side are the same. But if you have a character, we can turn that off. So now it's asymmetrical, so this side is different from that side. So there you go, that's enough for you to get started with sculpting. If you want to learn more, there's plenty more on my channel. So if you want to keep getting updates, you can subscribe, or you can leave a comment below if you like this. Thanks for watching and have a great day.